All right, so let's come up with a number out of 100. What are the chances that the opening day Cleveland Browns that Jadeveon Clowney is in their lineup?
30.
30 that he will be?
30 that he will be. I think there's a lot of dancing, and it certainly sounds like, and again, like most things in my life, I base it off the reporting of Mary Kay Cabot. If he wanted to be here,
who doesn't?
Yeah, God bless Mary Kay. So I mean, if it could have happened, and as she has pointed out, Vernon's contract at some point sort of kicks in, and if once that kicks in, then they're not going to sign Clowney. So, you know, um, maybe he'll end up here just because he doesn't know where else to go. But it certainly from what's out there feels like it could have happened by now, and it hasn't. Yeah. So it just leads me to believe that maybe he's just looking for something else.
Well, Chris Rowling of the Bleacher Report says that Clowney's most likely destination is Cleveland. He continues to be a massive point of confusion when it comes to the contract status in the NFL. Pay is why he's still a free agent. Still disputed pay or not, it's hard to ignore the suspects. Cleveland Browns come to mind first. At this point, expect Clowney to take the best offer. He might be able to feast off statistically while opposing offenses focus on stopping and slowing down Myles Garrett. Could set himself up for a huge contract next year instead of the one he was hoping to get this year. That's a good point. He signs here. It doesn't take away from what Myles Garrett is going to do, and it'll just jump his stats up a little bit.
No, that's why I work at cleveland.com. I try to surround myself with people who are better than me, so then it makes it easier for me to do my job. So, that's, I would want to play opposite Myles Garrett. I would want to play opposite the guy who's going to demand double teams on a bunch of occasions and free me up to do what I'm going to do. So, I mean, from that standpoint, isn't that great? Isn't that great when part of the Browns pitch can be, hey, come play with another great guy at your position and he'll help you do your job? Again, how often has that been a pitch the Browns have been able to make to free agents?
And then you make up a number that you like and just assume that's the number, like $18 million. Well, where'd they come up with that? Well, it was established by Jadeveon Clowney. Oh, okay. Then that's what we'll deal off. I mean, that number could really be $8 million.
Again, I mean, it's times like this. I don't know. They got to win on the field at some point, right? Obviously, they got to win on the field. But the Browns right now, they're in a position to woo a guy like Clowney because A, they have talent, and B, they have cap room. How many teams have that? That's how you build a winner, with talent and cap space. They're not strapped. They have a chance to bring in a guy like this, and you can understand how the situation would be enticing for him, which again sort of goes back to well, then why hasn't it happened yet? So I don't know. I get it. The Browns are still the leader, but it feels like to me like the Browns might be the leader all the way up to the point where he signs with somebody else.
Well, and he's been using Cleveland as something to bounce numbers off of, since nobody else seems to be liking them.
Again, they're not desperate. And that's the thing too. And I think in the end, and this goes back to the Sashi Brown era, and this is why if Andrew Berry can be allowed to do this job, in the end, you do win with principles. You do win with sticking, I think, to some ideals, and I don't think they're at a point where they have to give in to Clowney's number if they think the number's too high. They like Joe Schobert, but they didn't maybe want to pay that number. So I think in the end, when you're building a roster long-term and thinking about how are we going to keep Myles Garrett, how are we going to keep these other guys that we like, you can't just throw money around willy-nilly. So it's okay for them Browns to say, we'll pay you X, but we're not going to Z. And if he demands Z and can get Z somewhere else, that's fine.
Well, all right, so you're playing a game. The player is establishing a number, and then the team is establishing a number. Somebody's doing it right, somebody's not doing it right. And you just wonder, is the poor guy's feelings going to be hurt if he only gets $16 million instead of 18?
I mean, I think sometimes, Les, that's what happens with bad teams, right? You get used or you get desperate and you go somewhere with a number you don't want to go. So I think for Browns fans, it will be useful in the end to, if they don't get Clowney, to not automatically view it as a failure. Maybe they don't get Clowney because they have principle and they're not going to be desperate and they're not going to be swayed and they're not going to give in to every demand. And in the end, you have to be strategic. Sometimes, you got to go an extra $1 million or $2 million to get a guy that you think is a difference maker. But desperation is no way to live. And I think too often the Browns have been in situations where they've been forced to be desperate, and throwing money at a guy who's just, looking for every last cent. And that's fine. That's what players should do. But they do not need Jadeveon Clowney to have a successful 2020.
But your point is well taken there, Doug, when you say that if he's not the guy at that number, you would think that, and you talked about Schobert before. If you really want a guy, you should just take him. If you have the money to pay him and you got all kinds of cap room, to make a point over $1 million at this stage of the game, I think is kind of ludicrous. You either want the guy or you don't want the guy. You can always make up the dollars somewhere else.
Yes, but also when I moved to Ohio, we put in a bid on a house and ended up not getting the house because we wouldn't budge over the last $1,000, and they wouldn't budge and we wouldn't budge, and we wound up in the house we live in now, and we like this house better. So I like on one hand, I get what you're saying of like, well, if you really like the guy, why not go the extra whatever? On the other hand, I'm imagining Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry have pretty concrete ideas on how you manage a salary cap, how you manage a roster, how much you spend on positions, what the value is of a guy. And if there's a lot of players out there, and I don't know if you say this is how much a good defensive end with the way our roster is built, this is how much we should pay him. And we're just not gonna go over that. I think in the long term, that's how you build a successful roster, because the $1 million extra you spend on Clowney now might be the $1 million you can't give Denzel Ward down the line.
Good point.
And you got to be smart, not just for 2020, but for now and later.
Excellent.